perhaps the largest section in all of Scripture that deals with purity. The most combined instructions on this one topic occur in Proverbs 5, 6, and 7. And just before that chapter in Proverbs 4, remind yourself that here is the wise man Solomon. Remember in 1 Kings 3 what he asked for? God gave him permission to ask for anything he wanted. He said, God, give me wisdom and an understanding heart. That didn't mean he was perfect. That didn't mean that he didn't mess up life a whole bunch, as a matter of fact. It just meant that when we refer to Solomon, when Jesus refers to Solomon, when the Bible speaks of Solomon, it is always in reference to the wise man that he was. Maybe some of it's because he learned from his mistakes, and maybe some of it's because he experienced a lot of trials. Whatever the case, in Proverbs 4, he's writing to his son. So we got boy to boy here, right? Or man to boy. We've got older, wiser Solomon writing to a younger son. And of all the things he could have said to him, I mentioned Proverbs 5. Look at Proverbs 5 and verse 1. My son, be attentive to wisdom and incline your ear that you may keep discretion and your lips. Verse 2, we'll talk about those more later. Look at verse 11. And at the end of your life you groan when your flesh and body are consumed. We'll talk about that a little more after lunch. Look at verse 21. For a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders his paths. Look at chapter 6 and verse 2. If you are snared in the words of your mouth, caught in the words of your mouth. Look at verse 12. A worthless person, a wicked man, goes about with crooked speech. Verse 14. With perverted heart, he devises evil. Verse 17. God hates a lying tongue. Verse 21. The wise man says, bind these things on your heart. Chapter 7, verse 3. Bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart. Chapter 7 and verse 21. With much seductive speech she persuades him, and with her smooth talk she compels them. Verse 25. Let not your heart turn aside. Do not stray into her path. I've just pulled out of those three chapters the references to heart, mouth, and life. And essentially that's our topics of discussion for this morning. Heart, mouth, or tongue, and life. And those three chapters are just filled with, and to not misuse it, he's writing about this woman that is trying to pull this young man away. And he's giving warnings and advice about how to remain wise and not allow yourself to be seduced and pulled in and give in and cause your life to be misery from that point forward. And he even goes into some graphic details for some of you older teenagers and gentlemen. He goes into some graphic details about how that looks and what will happen and how she'll try to do that. And all of this is in an effort to keep this young man pure. Where does all this start? Well, it starts where we start this morning. It starts with the heart, back in chapter 4 and verse 21. Chapter 4 and verse 21, let them not escape from your sight. Keep them within your heart. And maybe more well known, verse 23, keep your heart with all vigilance or diligence, some translations say. For from it flow the springs, or from it issues all of life. Now think about those two verses with me for just a moment as we began to try to think about our hearts. And please recognize this morning, I wasn't invited to speak because I'm an expert at anything, period. And I'm certainly not perfect. And so I'm here this morning just to be real with you. I'm going to tell you some things today that I've never told my children. The time will come when I'll tell my children, but they're not. I have a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So they're not there yet. But the time will come when I'll explain to them, much like this father is explaining to his son. I'm just going to be honest with you today and just right out of the gate, just tell you that it's not easy for me to admit some of the things and challenges that I've had in my life. And I haven't ever gotten it all right. And so today's not about perfection. Today is about drawing precision into what will help me be better. What will help me do better? As I close out this afternoon, my challenge to you is to live each day so that you don't regret it tomorrow. Live each day so that you don't. You got your whole life before you. You got all of these decisions in front of you. You got all of these choices. And the last thing I want you to do, young men, is to make a choice now that's going to cripple you for the rest of your life. And it all starts with the heart. In the Old Testament, the heart was used in connection with the mind. We typically think about the two as separate. You know, we got a heart here, it pumps physical blood. We got a mind here that thinks and processes and chooses, and we use logically and we reason out and all of that in our minds. And so you and I, in our medical world of terminology, we can separate the two, but in the Old Testament they didn't. In other words, when you read in the Bible in the Old Testament heart, we're talking the innermost part of a person. We are talking about the will, the personality, the whole. We are talking about the part to which God turns to examine. And I think it would help us all to recognize and to put the heart and the mind together and to use them connected. When you read in the Bible in Proverbs 4 and verse 23, keep your heart. Just in parentheses in your mind, put the word mind. As you read it, keep your heart, parentheses, mind, with all diligence, because out of it flow the issues of life, or spring forth the issues of life. Over there in chapter 7, the verse that we read, Solomon says, it's like a tablet, your heart is, that you are writing on. Write on your tablet, write on your heart. And in parentheses, put the word mind. Write on your mind. Your mind is like a whiteboard. It's like a marker board. And you're writing on it. What are you writing on it? What is most important? You see, when it comes to the heart is the will of man. The heart is where the desires are. The heart is where the decisions are made. It's where the deliberation takes place. Now, you and I think of that as our brain, right? What do you use to make your decisions? What do you use to deliberate what is good and bad or right or wrong? You and I would all say we use our brains. We use our noggin. We use the thing that God put on our shoulders, right? We don't think about that in terms of heart, because our heart down here is doing something very different physically. But spiritually they're connected. And so this is your heart spiritually. What decisions are you making? What deliberations are you going through? What are you struggling with? What's plaguing your mind? You know, it might be that science test on Tuesday, right? Well, that gets in there, and that's just hard to get rid of, isn't it? It might be that math test that you didn't do well on last week. It gets in there, and it just. But what else is in there? What's in your mind when it comes to What's important? What matters? What am I going to do? What is my desire? Is it about what I want to do, or is it about what God wants me to do? All of this is going on in your minds. And the heart is a matter of priority. And so think about some priorities with me for a moment. As I look at the word heart, think about how I just take words sometimes and I just use the letters because it's easy for a guy like me, and I appreciate, Shane, you not making my job too hard, because you did pretty good with that. So I just, I have a hard time remembering things. My mind's not real sharp. So let me help you remember it like this. Just take the word heart. Just take Heart. And when it comes to the heart, when it comes to the mind, it's a matter of priority. What's most important to you? Let me tell you, whatever's most important to you is in your mind. It's in there often. It's in there a lot. It's something that you constantly circle back around to. It could be something as simple as sports. Well, I love sports. I played sports. I love to keep up with sports. I love to watch sports. And I'm imagining in a group this size, there's some more sports advocates among guys. That topic comes up in my mind often. It's up there. It's a priority of mine. I enjoy it. What about something much more serious like God? How much of a priority, how often does the thoughts of God come around in my heart? Do they circle? Is God so as you think about the heart, you think about priorities. And if you want to know what somebody's priorities are, all you got to do is just talk to them for a little while. You just spend a few moments with them, and they'll tell you what's important to them, because that's what they want to talk about. And we'll say more about that after the break with our tongue. But is your heart focused on, well, just take the H and just put the word heaven. Now, is heaven a priority for you? You say, well, this is a young men's day. Why do we want to talk about heaven? That's a long way away. There's a lot of guys in this room right now that are a lot closer to heaven than I am, right? At least that's how we think, isn't it? I've got years to live. I tell you what, when I graduate from college and start this thing called life, then maybe then heaven will be a priority. Paul, in writing to the young man Timothy, I don't know how young he was. I would dare say he was older than what you and I think of young, but I'm still convinced he's young in terms of maybe young adult, maybe still teenager, but maybe young adult. And as he closes out his last bit of advice in 2 Timothy 4, he makes it known to Timothy, hey, Timothy, I'm dying. My life's not going to last very much longer. I'm being poured out. It's a metaphor. It's an imagery there. Finally, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness. I'm in 2 Timothy 4 and verse 8. Paul makes it very clear there's a righteous judge, and he's going to give this crown of righteousness. Is that a priority for our hearts? As we keep how do we keep our minds, our hearts with all diligence? How often do you think about heaven? How often do you tell yourself, remind yourself, convince yourself, I want to go to heaven? It's got to be a matter of priority. And here's what I know. I know that for some guys in this room, right now, you're safe. S-A-F-E. You're safe. Something happened to you today, you're going to heaven. You're innocent. You're You're not accountable at this point in the eyes of God. I don't know what age everybody is in this room, but I'm looking at some young guys. And I'm convinced in my heart that some of you are safe. But there's others of us in this room that aren't in that category. Now, we can be in another category, and it's not the safe category, it's the saved. S-A-V-E-D. Saved. We can be in that category, and I hope that those of us who are of accountable age are. That heaven is, if nothing else existed for me, heaven would be my priority. I want to talk about going to heaven. I want people to know that I'm excited, that I'll be honest with you, I don't want to go today. I don't mind going, but I mean, I've got a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 1-year-old. I've got a wife. I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy life. And I would be lying if I said I wanted to go to heaven today. But I do want to go to heaven. And I'm excited about going to heaven. That's a priority for me. And whenever God wants me to go, I don't get to choose that. I'm just being honest with you. I'm just being real. If it's not today, I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. If it's not tomorrow, I'll be okay with that too. But whenever the time comes, is that our priority? Or here's the other option. The other option is the E, and that's earth. And you can't have both. You understand? I'm telling you that I'm enjoying living life on earth. And I'm telling you that I believe that I have some reasons to try to continue to live on earth. But I'm not telling you that earth is my priority. I'm just living here for a period of time. And what I know can happen, because I've been there and I've done that, I've been a teenager, and what's so easy is that all you see is earth right now, here. This is what it's all about right now. This becomes the priority because it's so much fun, and I'm enjoying it. And maybe there's some of those years, I remember 4th grade was terrible. I remember 7th grade was terrible. 9th grade was terrible. 11th grade was terrible. So maybe if you're a 4th grader, a 7th grader, a 9th grader, or an 11th grader, maybe you're looking for something better if your life was like my life. But then I got the other years. I got the other years like kindergarten. Well, that was a good year, man. That was a good year. That's the year you sleep in the afternoons, right? 5th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade. Well, those are good years. So if you're in one of those grades, then you're probably thinking, man, it doesn't get any better than this. It's all a matter of perspective, right? And so what did I just admit to you? I just admitted to you that the person sitting beside you could be miserable on earth while you're having the time of your life. And you know what changed? The only thing that changed was what grade you're in. That's all that changed. But I know that especially in those good times, in those good years, when you're the king of the hill, so to speak, 8th grade, my schools were set up to where we went K through 8 and then we went 9 through 12. And so in the 8th grade, you were the king of the hill. And then the 12th grade, you were the top dog again. And so those are great. I didn't ever want those years to end. Could we just pause time? I don't want to go anywhere else. And it's easy to get focused on earth and to think, this is not what it's all about. We're strangers. We're aliens. We're pilgrims. This life isn't going to last forever. 8th grade isn't going to last forever. 12th grade isn't going to last forever. Now, I know some who've tried to make a career out of some grades. I had one guy in my class, I think he'd been in 12th grade for 4 or 5 years, They try, but at some point, they're going to kick them out, You can't stay there forever, as much as you would like to. The same way with this earth. We're not going to stay here forever. So our priority's got to be on something bigger, something greater, something outside of this earth. And thus I call your attention back to the H, and it's heaven. Is my mind telling me this morning that heaven's my priority? Or is it earth? When I come to the A for me is about acceptance. What I know is that a lot of people make a priority of being accepted. And some people, especially teenagers, will do anything in order to be liked. And when I say anything, I mean anything. Good Christian young men will throw morals out the window in order to be liked, to be popular, to be in the group. I never will forget, my daddy owned a convenience store. I told you I was going to be real with you. If I never get invited back, that's okay. I was real with you, okay? I ain't going to stand up here and lie to you and make you think I'm perfect. My daddy owned a convenience store. He had a young lady that worked there. She was a teenager. I don't remember how old I was. I was 2 years younger than her. She was probably a 10th grader, so I was in a 7th, 8th grader. It might have been 3 grades behind her. She was a very, very attractive young lady. I mean, she was the one that all the guys wanted to date, right? She worked for my daddy. She had this terrible habit, smoking. And so, in the convenience store, my daddy he sold tobacco products. And so she would take her breaks and she would go out around behind the store and she would smoke. Well, I'm standing in front of you. I'm allergic, highly allergic. If you smoked before you come in this morning, I could tell you. That's how bad I am. Been allergic to smoke all of my life. But you know what I was going to do? I was going to smoke. I sure was. Because smoking meant I got to go out behind the building alone with her. That happened about twice, and I about died. And I ain't never smoked again in my life, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I'm not telling you that story to say anything other than I understand what it means to try to be accepted. And sometimes you will let yourself do things that you told yourself you would never do. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted her to see me. I wanted to be cool. About died as a result of it. And so I'm telling you that it was worth being accepted to me, at least on 2 occasions. It was worth dying. Really? Was it? I look back now and think about how dumb it was, because we don't use the S word, stupid, in my house, although I'd love to use it, okay? I'll tone it down a little and tell you how dumb I was. What a dummy. But I know that acceptance or the desire for it is real. I know it is. And so you do things that your parents wouldn't want you doing, and you do things that you would never do in front of your parents. But you'll do it with that group because that's what got you into the group, and that's what will keep you in the group, and you want to stay in the group. And if that's your priority, I'm telling you that you are writing things on the tablet of your heart that are disastrous. For time's sake, we must move on to the R. The R is relationships. I love relationships. I love friendships. I love being married. I love my parent-child relationships. And we got relationships all around us. I'm speaking specifically to you of dating relationships and friendships. Maybe one day they're marriages and maybe one day you're a parent. But right now you're a friend and you might be a boyfriend. So you might have a dating relationship and you've got some friendships. I'm asking you, are those relationships your priority? And what in those relationships are your priority? Is purity in those relationships your priority? No, this is not about the tip. You know, I had a guy, I was just over at a retreat all week in the mountains, and I had a guy say that, you know, I heard a guy over there say, one of the biggest problems that he hears from your generation is, why does the church always talk about sexual purity? Why is that always? You see, when we say purity, we always come back around to this idea of sexual purity. Have you read Romans 1 lately? Do you know how Paul starts that list of sins there? The first 4 are sexual in nature. Have you read 1 Corinthians 6, beginning in verse 9 lately, as to those who won't go to heaven? The first 3 there, if my memory serves me correctly, are sexual in nature. Have you read Galatians 5 lately? We call them the works of the flesh. Do you realize how that list starts? It starts with sexual sins. How about Ephesians chapter 5, down about verse 3 of that chapter, when Paul has spent the whole 4th chapter telling us to put off the old man and to put away the old man. And then he comes over to chapter 5 and he says, now put away all filthiness sexually with your body. It seems to me that we talk about that a lot because that's a pretty heavy topic in Scripture. When you talk about the list, quote unquote, of sins or unrighteousness or evil, it starts there every time. At least 1 or 2 different sexual immoralities are mentioned there. And so I think it's only natural for us to talk about it a lot. Are we being pure with our relationships? Are we being pure in our friendships? Now, purity involves honesty. Not just sexual purity, but honesty. It involves telling the truth. It involves being who we say we're going to be. It involves being that friend that others want to have as a friend. The wise man said, if you're going to have friends, you must be friendly. What does that include? Well, it certainly doesn't include changing morals or defying your upbringing or turning your back on God. But what it does include is being there, being honest, being upright, saying what needs to be said, not doing what doesn't need to be done, saying no at various times, not only in a friendship with fellow guys, but in a friendship with females. Being able to say no and mean it. I come to the T because we're out of time, and the T is technology. Are we being pure in our technology? Folks, I didn't grow up in a world with a smartphone on my hip. I didn't grow up in that world. You are. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Don't misunderstand me. I didn't grow up in a world with an iPad in my hand. You are. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I didn't grow up with a computer in 2 or 3 rooms of my home and one that you could take from room to room. I didn't grow up with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. What I am saying is there's some dangers. And you and I need to make it a priority to be pure in our minds, in our hearts, with our technology. You got things at your fingertips that your parents never envisioned possible at your fingertips. And for those of you that are parents in this room, I found this statistic very alarming. 23% of parents have rules for technology use in their home. That's not even a fourth of us. What's wrong with us, parents? I'm telling you, there's dangers here. We know this. Social media, there's dangers. I love it when I don't even know what the age is on Facebook, but I love it when I get on there and find a 5-year-old. You know, they put ages on those things on purpose, and you and I go in there and lie about our age to get on there. How much pure sense does that make? Right? I'm not saying that just because you're 14 or 16 or 18 that you're capable of handling social media at that point. I don't know who set that age. I'm telling you, there's a lot of 38 and 48-year-olds on there going cuckoos with social media. So it's not it's not an age thing for me, but when there is an age, there's a reason for the age, and it's to protect you. It's not to harass you. It's not to keep you from being in the know. It's not about limiting your opportunities in life. It's there for a reason. It's there for your protection. Use it for that. Because there's a lot of things on there that are dangerous. Social media, internet. The list could just go on and on. We've got to make it a priority to be pure in here, or it won't happen naturally, because the enemy is out there reaching and grasping for your heart. The devil wants your heart because he knows this is where it starts. And when I get this, then I can start working through other things. But I got to get this first. And if you don't allow Satan in here, he's going to have a hard time getting this and getting these. But if you let him in here, if you allow him a little room in here, watch out. Because he's fixing to get this and he's fixing to get these, and you're going to be talking and walking in places that you don't need to be. Rise up,